and welcome. Federal government raises hope on economic recovery, insists Nigeria will exit recession in the first quarter of 2021. Court orders remand of Senator Ali Ndume in Kuje prison for failing to produce the former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina. Organised Labour gives reasons for staging a walkout during a meeting with federal government representatives on the fuel price hike, alleges breach of agreement by the government. And COVID-19 vaccine developed by Oxford University promises 70% protection against the virus. Plus we'll have business, sports and later on news from our studios in London. On Business News tonight, Association of Bureau de Change Operators asks Forex users to patronize central bank licensed BDC operators for access to dollar at official exchange rates.
And on sports news tonight, World Football Governing Body FIFA bans CAF President Ahmad Ahmad for 5 years.
Nigeria's economy has now slipped into recession, and that's a fact, making it the second time in 5 years. Indeed, many economic analysts had expected the negative data from the National Bureau of Statistics showing the nation's gross domestic product for the third quarter of 2020 contracting by 3.62%. Senator Ali Ndume, the chairman, Senate Committee on Army, is in troubled waters as the court has ordered his remand in Kuje prison as he could not produce the embattled former chairman of the Pension Reforms Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina. And did you know that the federal government is still subsidizing petroleum products importation? That's coming from the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipre Silva. All this on the news at 10 tonight. But let's start off with the economy. And notwithstanding the sliding of the nation's economy into recession, the federal government is optimistic of exiting by the first quarter of 2021. At the opening of the 26th Nigerian Economic Summit in Abuja, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, emphasized that Nigeria's case is not unique as it toes the line of other countries already experiencing economic decline. She gave the assurance that the economic recession, which is the second in 5 years, will be short-lived. Our correspondent Gloria Himezuki reports.
A convergence of government officials, private sector and civil society organizations at the 26th Nigeria Economic Summit in Abuja. Nigeria's economic woes amidst a recession is foregrounded here. But the finance minister says the nation's case is not as bad as other developed countries.
While the economy has entered into recession in this third quarter, the trend of the growth suggests that this will be a short-lived recession, and indeed by the fourth or at worst the first quarter of 2021 that the country will exit recession.
Quite intentionally, Chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group appealed to the federal government to reinforce strategic partnership for growth.
I beg you to ensure that no Nigerian child is out of school. I beg you to ensure that none of our mothers die at childbirth, that no citizen lacks social protection, that we create an environment that has world-class infrastructure, that we have respect for the rule of law.
In the panel session, the debate on policy inconsistencies, youth engagement and private sector collaboration became pivotal.
Ensuring that you increase revenue depends on a number of things. Reducing leakage is one of it, but also, inevitably, in certain instances, expanding the tax bracket is another.
If we do not have the right policies, a business can only be as great as the government or the environment allows it to be.
As a country, we must listen to the people. And the only way we can address all of these challenges now is to take advantage of the constitutional amendment that is ongoing.
In response, the Vice President underpins that the federal government is working hard to incentivize local businesses.
It goes without saying that partnerships remain essential to attract the resources for building a solid national infrastructural base.
The pressure to develop innovative approaches is especially great at this time. Organizers believe that this is particularly fundamental to deliver economic outcomes that would impact on the lives of many Nigerians at this time. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
No one saw this coming, but the court today stunned the chairman, Senate Committee on Army, Senator Ali Ndume, when he ordered his remand at Kuje Prison. The reason is his failure to produce a man he stood surety for, the former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina. We have confirmation now that the senator has been moved to Kuje Correctional Center as ordered by Justice Okonabang, who insists he'll remain there until he is able to fulfill the bail bond.
It's a case that dates back to October the 25th, 2019, when the former chairman of the defunct Pensions Reform Task Team, Mr. Abdul Rashid Maina, was first arraigned on a 12-count charge of money laundering, operating fictitious bank accounts, and fraud. He pleaded not guilty on the 25th of November 2019. He was granted bail in the sum of 1 billion naira and 2 sureties who must be serving senators. The court also ruled that the 2 sureties must sign a 500 million naira bail bond and always be in court with the defendant at each sitting. Unable to meet the bail terms, Justice Abang on January the 28th, 2020, based on an application for variation, reduced the bond from 1 billion naira to 500 million, with 1 surety who must be a serving senator. However, after about 6 months in prison due to his inability to meet the bail conditions, Senator Ndume stood surety for Maina with a promise to pay the federal government 500 million naira in case Maina jumps bail. Upon his release from prison, Mr. Maina on 4 consecutive occasions failed to appear in court. Fast-tracked to the present, in a bench ruling, Justice Okonabang ordered Ndume's remand, pending the fulfillment of his bail bond, which is a forfeiture of 500 million naira to the federal government or the production of Mr. Maina. The court also empowered the federal government to sell Senator Ndume's property at Asokoro in order to recover the 500 million naira bail bond. Justice Abang added that Senator Ndume shall be released from Kuje Correctional Center once he's able to pay the 500 million naira to the federal government, or if the government is able to depose the property. Lawyer to Senator Ndume, however, disagrees with the ruling of the court as he vows to go on appeal.
We were only briefed last week on the 19th, and we had applied to the court for all the previous documents related to the bail to be given to us to enable us effectively and effectually defend Senator Ndume. Because those documents have not been given to us by the court, we asked for an adjournment. That issue of adjournment was refused, and the court proceeded thereafter for the forfeiture of the bond. Our client has been directed to be remanded in Kuje prison, and he has given us instructions to test the matter on appeal.
Immediately after the proceeding, Senator Ndume, wearing a white native attire with matching cap, was led out of the court by officials of the Nigerian Correctional Service. The trial in absentia of Maina has been fixed for November the 24th, 2020.
Meanwhile, the Akwa Ibom State High Court has issued a bench warrant for the arrest of Professor Ignatius Uduk of the University of Uyo, who is accused of involvement in electoral fraud during the 2019 general elections. The Independent National Electoral Commission had filed a motion for substituted service, which was granted on November the 16th after several unsuccessful attempts to serve the professor with a summons to appear before the court. The presiding judge frowned on the refusal of the professor to obey the order of the court and adjourned the matter to December the 9th, when the police are expected to produce the defendant in court. Staying with the court, and as part of efforts to ensure speedy dispensation of cases, the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Monica Dongban Memson, has set up 7 special panels charged with the responsibility of decongesting the backlog of appeals. Justice Dongban Memson stated this in Abuja at the maiden edition of the meeting with presiding justices of the 20 divisions of the Court of Appeal. The working conference, which is the first of its kind, was specially chosen to promote a sense of togetherness by enabling the most experienced minds to be deployed on special decongestion panels that will tackle the most congested divisions. The special panels, which will be sitting in 2 sessions daily, will work for 3 days to dispose of 100 motions. Justice Dongban Memson explains that the establishment of the panels became necessary in view of the lingering appeals clustering the court, owing to what she described as the unwillingness of some litigants who go into deep slumber without filing complete processes. Away from legal matters, and there's no end in sight to the disagreement between Labour and the federal government as the unions led by the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress justify the decision to walk out on the federal government during a meeting at the presidential villa. The unions say their action is in protest against the government's violation of terms of their agreement. The Deputy President of the NLC, Mr. Nasir Idris, says that nothing in the agreement reached with the government in their last meeting allows the increase of the pump price of petrol.
You may recall that following our notice to government to protest the increase in pump price of petroleum product and the electricity tariff, government reached out to Labour not to proceed on its nationwide protest that was slated for 28 September 2020. Terms and the conditions for putting the protest on hold were clearly spelled out in the Memorandum of Understanding. The conditions include fix the existing refineries and doing all positive things that will ensure enhanced and sustainable local refining capacity. Noting in the agreement gives government license to embark upon pain-inducing and life-crippling increase in pump price of product at this difficult time. Government conduct was not only violation of fundamental terms of its agreement with Labour, it was in bad faith calculated to frustrate the process on amicable resolution. At our meeting yesterday, we had prioritized the urgent this matter before delving into the issue of palliatives. However, the Honorable Minister of Labour, Dr. Chris Mwabuze Ngigi, did not think it was important. All effort to make him see reason failed, given the tense situation and the government manifest insensitivity. Labour has no option other than to walk out.
No additional funds will be needed to complete the Lagos-Ibadan railway project, as all funds required for the project have been duly approved. And that's according to the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, who denied claims that an additional $650 million was needed for the project. The minister, who appeared to be unhappy with the pace of work, also asked the China Civil Engineering Construction Company to engage more workers to ensure the completion of the project on schedule. He said this during a routine monthly inspection of the 156-kilometer railway project.
I did say in the National Assembly that we require $650 million more. I said the cost of the contract was $1.6 billion. But between Itabe-Warri and Lagos-Ibadan, we had to ask for another about $650 million or so for extra work. That has been approved a long time. I was just repeating it to the National Assembly to know that that's not that we're asking for fresh money. All the money we require for these 2 projects have been approved. We don't need more money. There is a need to increase the pace of work. They are doing well, but the pace of work has slowed down. COVID is no longer an excuse. They've worked for over 3-4 months and they've not lost anybody. The implication that COVID is no longer an excuse. So we insist, and we've told the Permanent Secretary and I and the Chairman of NRC with the Managing Director and Director of NRC, we've agreed that the technical committee should meet with them tomorrow to ensure that they put not policies, measures that will ensure that the pace of work is increased, so that by the next time we come here for inspection, we will see that there's a huge improvement.
In part 2, after the break, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Temipire Silva, admits federal government is yet to end subsidy on fuel. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government raises hope on economic recovery, insists Nigeria will exit recession in the first quarter of 2021. Court orders remand of Senator Ali Ndume in Kuje prison for failing to produce the former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdulrasheed Maina. Organised Labour gives reasons for staging a walkout during a meeting with federal government representatives on the fuel price hike, alleges breach of agreement by the government. And COVID-19 vaccine developed by Oxford University promises 70% protection against the virus. Now, if you're one of those who thought the federal government has removed subsidy from petroleum products, then listen to the Minister of State for Petroleum, Temipire Silva, who explains that the payment of subsidy is still being funded by the NNPC. According to the minister, Nigeria is yet to completely stop subsidizing fuel importation, but the process of deregulation has begun. The minister was our guest earlier this evening on our program, Politics Today.
We are still trying to manage this bumpy start. I must agree. That is the actual situation. We have not really been able to get to that 100% removal of subsidy from the foreign exchange end. If we were to actually take it out completely and allow people to access foreign exchange from the parallel market and import the product, the price at the pump will even be more. But the federal government, knowing the impact this will have on the people, decided that they are going to still manage this situation. NNPC is the only one that is able to import. And NNPC is able to import because they generate their own dollars and they are able to import directly from their dollars. That's why the ordinary marketer is not been able to access foreign exchange to import this product. And if they do that, we believe that that will even impact the price. That's why, for now, NNPC is the supplier, the supplier of last resort, continues to play that role to supply the product at a slightly subsidized rate. It is still subsidized in a way, I must say. We are not paying subsidy. I'm just saying that NNPC is able to import from their dollars, the dollars that they are able to generate. So for some, they are not able, we cannot now look at it as accessing dollar at a subsidized rate from the central bank. But NNPC is able to generate the dollars and import. You know, they do crude oil swap. They use the crude oil to swap. And so somehow we know that there is still a subsidy element, but we are not in a hurry to take that off now, because we know that if we take that off, it's going to impact the people much more than it's impacting them now.
The Chairman Senate Committee on Aviation, Senator Smart Adeyemi, is raising alarm over what he calls a dangerous situation where airline operators cut corners in carrying out routine maintenance on their aircraft. He explains that the Nigerian Customs Service has not complied with the executive order to waive taxation on importation of spare parts for commercial aircraft, a situation which is putting a strain on airline operators struggling to survive.
Today, let me give you the warning and the danger before the force. Airline operators in Nigeria airspace, they are managing and they are cutting corners. I want to put it on record that there is danger in flying in Nigeria today, in case you don't know. There have been instances of some planes keeping off the runway. You didn't care to find out what happened. We must support the airline operators, pending when we have our own national carrier, if we so desire. But if we want to continue with the airline operators, like most nations of the world are doing today, you cannot afford to leave the airline operators on their own, because they will want to be in business and struggle to make profit, and by extension, they'll be cutting corners. Some of them confess to us, which they never did on the floor of the public hearing, that they have their goods at the port, that they couldn't claim them because of the charges. We must raise alarm. The alarm I'm raising today is that the airline operators are just managing. Other countries in Africa, they are giving substantial bailout to the airlines. If you say you are not concerned, God forbid, you don't know where you will fly, or your brother will fly, or your parents will fly. So we must come out to say this to you and to Nigerian people, and to please appeal to Mr. President that there's a need to review the 4 billion naira available.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has begun working with the relevant agencies of the government to legal authorities to impose appropriate sanctions on defaulting travelers who resist testing for the COVID-19 upon arrival into Nigeria. The chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, stated this at the weekly briefing of the task force in Abuja. According to him, over 39,000 in-country travelers evaded testing for COVID-19, even after making payments online.
The weekly news briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 begins with the chairman decrying low response to testing, just as he frowns seriously at in-country travelers who are evading testing for the virus.
The Presidential Task Force has been evaluating the compliance of Nigerians with the protocols for testing by inbound and outbound travelers. The PTF is concluding steps to work with relevant institutions and legal authorities to impose the appropriate sanctions on those that default on the protocols.
The Minister of Health also highlights the effects of the pandemic on national response to other diseases such as tuberculosis.
Nigeria's response in the fight against TB suffered a decline due to COVID-19, and a new strategy is needed to ramp up performance.
The Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control also gives an update on the number of Youth Corps members who have tested positive to the virus.
We tested over the last few weeks a total so far of 34,785 people, of which we found 138 positives only. So we have a total prevalence of 0.4%. So less than 1 in 100. In fact, about 1 in 200. 1 in 200 new people coming into the camps turned out to be positive for COVID. None of them were allowed into the camps. All of them were excluded and either managed at home or in the treatment center, depending on if they had symptoms and what state they were in.
Nigeria has recorded over 66,000 cases of COVID-19 since its outbreak in the country in February this year. While over 62,000 of those infected have been successfully treated, the country has sadly lost over 1,000 COVID-19 patients.
The slow pace of development and insecurity in the country is partly due to a non-functional local government system. And that's the position of the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Idris Wase. According to him, local government autonomy is critical as it will foster peaceful coexistence among Nigerians. He was speaking during a leadership training for councillors from Akwa Ibom State, organized by the House Chairman on Judiciary, Onofiok Luke.
Total autonomy, if you want peaceful coexistence with the country, if you want the true development, I grew up from the village. I used to know what the chairman used to do. Even when we were early under the local government administration, it started in 76, and there were lots of things they were doing. Part of the insecurity that we're having today is because the local government is not functioning very well. Yes. And even the development that we're supposed to have across the land is because the local government is not functioning. I think we got it wrong. We started getting it wrong from 2003 when we took election of local government back to the states, and every governor would sit in conjunction with his own license or whatever, write his own result. For me, I do not believe that's the right procedure.
When the news at 10 returns, Association of Bureau de Change Operators asks Forex users to patronize central bank licensed operators for access to dollars at official exchange rates. That's on Business. Please join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. The United Nations World Food Programme is distributing $1.1 billion that is, and food items worth about $4 million to vulnerable Nigerians. Addressing journalists during the distribution of the palliatives to residents in the nation's capital, the country director of the WFP, Dr. Paul Hauer, explains that the exercise is to help ameliorate the impact of COVID-19. The exercise will also be replicated in communities in Kano and Lagos states.
If you're a household that's able to get cash, you get 39,000 naira, which is basically enough for 2 months, calculated for the food needs. And so that's going to be very helpful. If you're one who doesn't have a bank account, you get 75 kgs of different types of grains, so rice, millet, and sorghum, plus a prepaid card of 19,000 naira. And so those are investments that are going to the population, and it's reaching 58,000 people approximately in growing, because there's a few more that we think we can reach if we get their bank account details appropriately documented. So it's about 58,000 people who will benefit from 2 months of support for their food needs, but as we said, not just to help them, but also to have that ripple effect in the economy in Abuja to help others as well. If the people here get the cash, they're able to buy from the lady who's selling those items. And that stimulates trade locally. And that's a very small example of what can happen on a much bigger scale, because we're injecting about over $1 million into Abuja through this program. Anyone who we register, because we spent a long time trying to make sure we get to the really vulnerable people, anyone we register goes on the National Social Registry that the government has. So they're not lost, but they're actually part of an expanded social registry.
Seplat Petroleum Development Company maintains it will continue to take steps to strengthen ties with its host community as it looks into suggestions that could lead to further development in the areas. A top management team, including the chairman of the company, Mr. Ambrose Ojako, and the chief executive officer, Mr. Roger Brown, gave the assurance during visits to the Edo State government and some communities in Edo and Delta State. They highlighted their commitment to sustaining the CSR programs, which include the I Can See and Pearls Quiz, as well as others which would increase the number and scope of beneficiaries of its development plans.
The Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC chairman, CEO, and other top management team's courtesy visit on the Edo State governor is the first stop for the day. They have words of gratitude for their host communities and reel out development initiatives embarked on in healthcare, education, and others, as well as the investments in and benefits of the Oben gas plant in Uriama local government area of Edo State.
From Oben, we're happy to say that we can deliver gas to Edo State and power the industries. The very first IPP since after the revolution, the Azura power plant, is indeed being fired from gas from Oben. And from Oben, we can take gas to the northern part of the country in Geregu, to Dangote Cement. And from there, we can also take gas all the way to Lagos. And we have gas, we can also deliver gas in the West Africa, gas pipeline.
The Edo State Governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, assured them of the government's support.
We now must demonstrate to our people that, look, you have a Nigerian spirit, which will help utilize the assets here for the development of our people, individuals, communities, and the state. And just be rest assured, by the grace of God, as long as I'm in the seat, I'm going to make sure that we create a new paradigm for us.
The Seplat team also visits the Oroje of Ukwe Kingdom's Palace in Delta State, where the company is commended for their development projects and asked to do more. Back in Edo State at the Palace of the Enogi of Obe, an abridged stakeholders meeting is held with representatives of the host communities.
Employment for the youth, developing the area, electricity, power to the hospital and other things. Other areas, contractors working in this area, developing shared youth. I've heard you, and I'm going to take it away from today and work on it with the team and deliver.
Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC, a London Stock Exchange and Nigerian Stock Exchange listed oil and gas company, also maintains that it is practice to nurture a constant and effective relationship with its stakeholders, one reason it has embarked on this visit to the various areas.
For the rest of the business news, here's Anne Waudu.
Thank you, Ijoma. Let's begin tonight with a statement coming from the Association of Bureau de Change Operators asking end users of foreign exchange to patronize Bureau de Change operators who are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria in order to access forex at the official rate. In a statement released today, the president of APCON, Mr. Aminu Gwadabe, explains that CBN-licensed BDCs have been mandated to buy dollars at the rate of 384 per unit and sell to end users at 386 per dollar to meet demands for personal and business travel allowances, medical bills, mortgage bills, and school fees. Mr. Gwadabe also asked foreign end users to report any licensed BDC operator selling the dollar above the official rate of 386 naira to APCON for sanction, as it seeks to discourage the use of higher forex exchange rates at the parallel market. In Oyo State, the governor, Seyi Makinde, has proposed 266 billion naira as budget for 2021 before the Oyo State House of Assembly, with recurrent expenditure at 136.3 billion naira and capital expenditure at 130.4 billion naira. The governor says the state has recorded a 26.4% growth in internally generated revenue within the last 1 year, while his administration plans to increase the state's IGR to 102 billion naira next year from the current 25.6 billion by widening the tax net and bringing more taxpayers into the system without increasing tax.
You will recall that in my 2020 budget presentation, I had stated that from January 2020, we will be recording a monthly internally generated revenue, IGR, of 3 billion naira. I'm happy to report to you that despite the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, we were just less than 200 million naira shy of our targets monthly.
Nigeria's per capita income may hit its lowest level in 40 years this year, and that's according to the World Bank's country director. He made this known today during a panel session at the ongoing 26th Nigerian Economic Summit, organized by the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. His projection is based on the significant drop in the price of crude oil on the international market, the decline in diaspora remittances from Nigerians abroad. Nigeria's per capita income, which was around $847 in 1980, stood at $2,229 this year, after hitting a record high of $3,222 in 2014. The slow pace of development and insecurity in Nigeria is partly due to a non-functional local government system. This is a position of the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Idris Wase. According to him, the need for local government autonomy cannot be overemphasized, as it would also foster peaceful coexistence among Nigerians. He was speaking during a leadership training for councillors from Akwa Ibom State, organized by the House Chairman on Judiciary, Onofiok Luke. And to the stock market now, where Nigeria's equities market has started the final week in the month of November with mildly negative sentiments after investors extended sell pressure on stocks across 4 major sectors on the NSE. Let's hear the details from Ekaite Afia.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Despite its gentle look, the bear refused to release its grip on the bull after dominating activities at the local equities market in 4 sessions last week. At the close of today's trading session, the NSE's main index fell marginally by 0.5%, reflecting about 9 billion naira loss in overall value of listed equities, as investors began the final week of November with a hangover of profit-taking. The latest round of sell pressure affected 46 equities across 4 key sectors of the market, while gains recorded by blue chips such as Dangote Cement, Nestle, Airtel Africa, and Bua Cement only managed to reduce the impact on the market. However, traders say they expect the market to swing back to the positive territory in the coming days as they anticipate the entry of a new set of investors who will be keen on the low price of some fundamentally sound stocks. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the activity chart, which shows that investors' appetite for equities still remains impressive, especially for the start of the week, as over 568 million naira changed hands for 7.32 billion naira in nearly 9,000 transactions today. Well, that's all for the Stock Market Report. I'm Ekaite Afia.
Thanks for watching Business News Tonight. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues with Ijoma.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, COVID-19 vaccine developed by Oxford University promises 70% protection against the virus. And more from our London studio in Around the World in 5. Plus, World's football governing body FIFA bans CAF President Ahmad Ahmad for 5 years for financial misconduct. And that will be on sports, all in a moment. To join us again. There's growing confidence that the coronavirus will be eradicated as trials on a vaccine developed by the University of Oxford shows it's highly effective at stopping people from developing COVID-19 symptoms. Let's head over to our London studio now with Around the World in 5 with Simon Pusey.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A large trial shows the coronavirus vaccine developed by the University of Oxford is highly effective at stopping people developing COVID-19 symptoms. Interim data suggests 70% protection, but the researchers say the figure may be as high as 90% by tweaking the dose. The results will be seen as a triumph, but come after Pfizer and Moderna vaccines showed 95% protection. However, the Oxford vaccine is far cheaper and is easier to store and get to every corner of the world than the other two, with experts saying it will play a pivotal role in fighting the pandemic at a world level. President Trump's campaign has distanced itself from a lawyer who made dramatic claims of voter fraud at several media events. Sidney Powell claimed without evidence last week that electronic voting systems had switched millions of votes to President-elect Joe Biden and said he won due to communist money. Mr. Biden is projected to win 306 votes in the US Electoral College, which determines who becomes president, far above the 270 needed to win. The United Nations has urged Ethiopian authorities to ensure the protection of civilians as the army plans to attack the capital of the northern region of Tigray. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced a 72-hour deadline for the region's fighters to surrender. The army warned the capital's 500,000 residents that they would encircle and potentially shell, urging citizens to flee, but the Tigray People's Liberation Front has vowed to keep fighting. Hong Kong democracy activist Joshua Wong and 2 fellow campaigners are facing the prospect of prison after pleading guilty to unlawful assembly during last year's mass protests. Mr. Wong appeared in court on Monday and said he expects to go to jail, possibly facing 5 years behind bars. The activist revealed he decided to change his plea after talking to his lawyer.
Perhaps the authorities wish me to stay in prison, but I'm persuaded that neither prison bars, nor election bans, nor any other arbitrary power will stop us from activism. What we are doing now is to explain the value of freedom to the world through our compassion to whom we love, so much that we are willing to sacrifice the freedom of our own.
The 3 were charged with organising and taking part in an unauthorised assembly. During the 2019 protests, Hong Kong's police headquarters became the target for protesters who threw eggs and sprayed graffiti. Polls have closed in Burkina Faso, where people have been voting in presidential and parliamentary elections. Voting passed peacefully, but some polling stations in eastern areas affected by a jihadist conflict had to close early due to security threats. Brutal attacks have forced more than 1 million civilians from their homes in the past 2 years alone. Campaigning was halted for 48 hours last week, following a deadly ambush on soldiers in the north of the country. President Roch Kabore is seeking a second 5-year term, with 13 opposition candidates challenging him. Belarus police have detained more than 200 people in the capital Minsk, following the latest in months of anti-government protests since the disputed presidential election in August. Thousands took to the streets of the Belarusian capital, and police used stun grenades to disperse the crowds. That's according to several of Belarus media outlets. Human rights groups say 205 people have been detained so far. The Interior Ministry has confirmed there have been detentions, saying those being held had been disturbing public order and resisting police officers, but it did not give any numbers. Opponents of President Alexander Lukashenko have staged regular protests since August, accusing him of rigging the election. The head of African football, Ahmed Ahmed, has been banned for 5 years by FIFA following an ethics investigation by the world's football governing body. FIFA said in a statement the Independent Ethics Committee had found Mr. Ahmed guilty of offering and accepting gifts and other benefits and misappropriation of funds. FIFA had sanctioned him with a ban from all football-related activity at both national and international level for 5 years. It also fined him 200,000 Swiss francs. And finally, how about this for a definition of monkey business? British musician Paul Barton was mobbed by the animals who tugged his hair, stole his music and climbed all over his piano. Not put off by Barton's rendition of Greensleeves, Beethoven's Für Elise and Michael Nyman's Diary of Love, some were eager to share his stool while others pounced upon the musician's shoulders while he played. The musician is hoping his music can raise awareness at a time when Thailand's tourism hiatus means that there are far fewer visitors to feed the monkeys and less funds allocated for their welfare. And that's your international news around the world in 5 now. Back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot for that, Simon. Now, the British Parliament is deliberating a petition by some groups and individuals requesting Parliament to implement sanctions against the Nigerian government for alleged human rights violations during the #EndSARS protests and Lekki shootings. The debate is in response to a petition signed by over 220,000 individuals in the United Kingdom requesting the UK government to sanction Nigeria for alleged violations of human rights.
Welcome to Sports News. The Edo State government wants the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to decide on the National Sports Festival whether it should go ahead. The Unity Games was initially postponed in March as a result of COVID-19 and later rescheduled for December the 3rd to the 18th. The United Kingdom announced that up to 4,000 people can return to outdoor sports stadia and live performances in low-risk parts of England from December the 2nd. permitting the revival of attendance at some Premier League games. The government says the crowd ceiling will be set at 4,000 or half the stadium capacity, which is lower in the lowest risk Tier 1 parts of the country once a stricter lockdown ends. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is facing up to 3 weeks on the sidelines after picking up a muscle injury during AC Milan's 3-1 win at Napoli on Sunday. Ibrahimovic has been in sensational form for Serie A leaders AC Milan this season, scoring 10 goals already to sit above Cristiano Ronaldo as the league's top scorer. That's it on Sports News. Ijama, back to you.
Thanks, Olumide. And the main news again. The federal government today raised hope on the nation's economic recovery, insisting that Nigeria will exit recession in the first quarter of 2021. The Minister of Finance, Budget and Economic Planning, Zainab Ahmed, stated this at the opening session of the 26th Nigeria Economic Summit in Abuja. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Bunyato. Good night.